Well, it's April and J.D. Vance is once again the talk of the town. Now, this time, April 2026, J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, made his first visit to Pakistan for the Islamabad Talks Round 1, and for Islamabad Talks Round 2, people were even more excited because preceding the first visit, there was this flood of memes, and J.D. Vance was in the jokes and in the Instagram stories across Pakistan. In fact, a tribe in Punjab claimed Vance as their own because of the similarity of the names. But a lot of people might have forgotten where J.D. Vance was in April 2025. So last year, the Vice President took his wife, Usha, who's Indian origin, for a 4-day visit along with their children to India. And this 4-day official visit came at a very tense time because Trump, as soon as he came into office, announced these punishing tariffs, and India was not spared. 26% tariffs on India. J.D. Vance went in those tense times to India to talk about a trade deal, and he got the red carpet rolled out for him, but not exactly the warm reception he might have hoped for. In fact, farmers across local towns and villages in India held up placards saying, "Go back, Vance, India is not for sale." And then something even more dreadful happened. The Pahelgam attack on the 22nd of April. And that tragedy rocked the world. 26 civilians, some of them on their honeymoon, were shot, killed in this beautiful valley of Indian occupied Kashmir. Now, across Pakistan, there was immediate condemnation from the government and from prominent politicians and celebrities. It wasn't only condemnation that Pakistan offered. It wasn't only sympathy and condolences Pakistan offered. Pakistan proposed, following the Pahelgam attack, the establishment of an independent inquiry by a third party. And this proposal received a lot of backing from Malaysia, from Turkey, from China, from Switzerland and Greece. But who rejected it outrightly? India. They didn't want an independent investigation. And I will let you decide why India wouldn't want an independent investigation. The Indian media was back to their hysterical and completely unforgivable blame game, pointing the finger of blame at Pakistan. Pakistan was accused of being behind the Pahalgam tragedy, and there was no evidence. In fact, students of history were quick to see the uncanny resemblance between the Pahelgam attack and a similar attack in March 2000, when 35 Sikhs were massacred in India, in Chitti Singh Pura. This was a claim that came from India. The false flag claim came from a retired Lieutenant General of the Indian Army, K.S. Gill. And that attack coincided with then US President Bill Clinton's visit to India. K.S. Gill writes that it was an attempt by India to frame Pakistan as a terrorist state. And once again, we saw immediately after Pahelgam, with no evidence, Pakistan was blamed for the attack and grounds were prepared for Operation Sindoor. Within 2 weeks of the Pahelgam attack, Operation Sindoor, an attack by the Indian government, the Indian Army, on a sovereign nation, Pakistan, was launched. But let's dissect the Pahelgam incident. Victims and their families openly said that emergency services were slow to arrive on the scene. Local politicians questioned where were the security forces, why was a popular tourist hub not protected, Where was the intelligence gathering? And how did these terrorists manage to get there? And, and spend quite a lot of time shooting these tourists. There were no answers to these questions, but let's interrogate or let's dissect some of the evidence. Now, immediately after Pahalgam attack, Jammu and Kashmir police offered a bounty of 30,000 US dollars for any information about the assailants. But soon after that, the Indian National Investigative Agency said that the initial sketches were wrong. So an investigation was not exactly accurate to begin with. Then Operation Mahadev was launched. And in the summer of 2025, the Indian authorities claimed that they had found the terrorists and they claimed that they were of Pakistani origin. And here's the evidence they presented: that the 3 terrorists that were shot or killed by the authorities, on 2 of them, they found Pakistani origin sweeties. I kid you not. They said that on the bodies of the slain terrorists, they found Candyland and Chocomax. Now, I checked in the office today, and we've not heard of Chocomax in Pakistan. But let's assume that there is a candy called Chocomax in Pakistan. The evidence suggested that the terrorists had bought that confectionery in Muzaffarabad, that's Pakistani side of Kashmir, a year before this attack in Pahelgam, May 2024 to be precise. But then another part of the report claimed that the terrorists had infiltrated 3 years earlier and were in India. So they were contradicting their own bits of evidence. The other bit of evidence is even more laughable. The Indian authorities claimed that on the bodies of 2 of the slain terrorists, they found Pakistani origin voter cards, laminated voter slips from an election in Pakistan. Now, they forgot to perhaps include in that investigation or in that dossier that they made that elections in Pakistan were held in February 2024. So these terrorists, alleged Pakistani origin terrorists, why were they carrying voter slips from a year earlier? And the Foreign Office of Pakistan clarified that in Pakistan we use no voter slips, and I know that for a fact. So this bit of conjured up, fabricated story of painting Pakistan, framing Pakistan as the hub of terrorism fell flat. And then, of course, Operation Sindoor was miscalculated. Pakistan crushed the Indian infiltration into Pakistani areas. In fact, Bunyan Marsoos was launched by the Pakistani military, and Pakistanis came out looking victorious. But that wasn't the end of it. That mini war was then celebrated by the US President Donald Trump. Every opportunity on any international forum that Donald Trump got, he managed to bring up the subject of how the Pakistanis downed 7 planes during that mini war in May between Pakistan and India. So Pakistan established itself as a military power, as being very, very good at aerial combat, but that wasn't the only thing the Pakistani military was working on. Following the conflict between America and Iran, the 12-day war in the summer of 2025, Pakistan was engaged in non-stop back-channel diplomacy to make sure that the Iranians and the US could come to some kind of conflict resolution, particularly about the nuclear issue. In fact, beginning of this year, even before Pakistan's role as the chief mediator was highlighted, Pakistan was invited to Istanbul for key talks between the US and Iran on the nuclear issue. This is before the attacks by Israel and America were launched on Iran in February of this year. Now, of course, Pakistan has established its position on the diplomatic map, leading the mediation, exhausting every avenue for diplomacy and dialogue, and succeeded in getting the 10-day ceasefire following the first round of Islamabad talks. The role of Pakistan as a diplomatic genius has been celebrated across the world. And India has displayed criminal silence through all of this. They stand isolated following the crushing defeat when they embarked on Operation Sindoor. They have actually lost their place as part of the Quad. They've also slipped to 6th position economically, and they stand isolated in the world today. Now we can see Modi sending his representatives to Saudi, but it's, I guess, too little too late, because throughout this conflict, Iran expected India to at least stand with Iran, or perhaps try for some peaceful resolution of the conflict. But as it stands, Iran feels backstabbed by India. India has managed to be on every table, but not contributed to diplomacy or to world peace on any of these tables. Also, cozying up to Israel will be remembered forever. India has been on the wrong side of history. Today, Pakistan has facilitated the ceasefire, the attempt of peace between Lebanon and Israel. Pakistan has managed to bring two extreme warring sides to a peace table. And of course, there are huge hopes with Islamabad talks round 2. But throughout this whole period, the Modi government has not only been silent, it's done something much worse. It's tried to sabotage these efforts of peace. The unforgivable, undiplomatic language of their external affairs minister, and then the sabotaging, the disinformation spread by India and its proxies. That is something the world cannot ignore. It's interesting that when Operation Sindoor and the Pahelgam attack, which a lot of people would say was a false flag, when that was initiated by India, it was to cover up the failing governance, to cover up the fact that the Modi government was not in touch with its vote bank. Today, there are new elections coming up, and Modi not only is looking pretty desolate and alone, and all we can see in terms of photo op is Modi buying a 10 rupee plate of jhalmuri. But this was an opportunity that Modi and the Indian government could have taken. They could have been part of something bigger, and if not, then perhaps at least supported the efforts of Pakistan to initiate peace, to make sure that the world doesn't spiral out of control, because this peace, I stress again and again, is not for Pakistan. It's not to consolidate Pakistan's position as the chief negotiator, the key mediator, the peacemaker, the leader of the global south, but also the fact that if Pakistan had not stepped up, if Pakistan doesn't deliver global peace, millions of Indians inside India, in the Gulf, and in Iran and in the US will suffer, because all of us will suffer, because the global economy will be in recession if Pakistan does not intervene, if Pakistan does not deliver. If India cannot find it in its heart to support efforts for peace, perhaps one can suggest that they can maybe not use this to undermine any efforts for peace that Pakistan is attempting, because ultimately Pakistan's position on the diplomatic stage is established and here to stay. 1 year on from Pahelgam attack. It's April again. Who would have thought last year that India's efforts to frame Pakistan on every international platform as the epicenter of terrorism would be replaced today with headlines reading, Pakistan, the epicenter of potential peace. Pakistan's position as the global leader for dialogue and diplomacy is well and truly established. India has a choice. It can choose to support its neighbors. It can choose to join hands in making sure that the world doesn't go down the nuclear route, that the world is a peaceful place for all its citizens, particularly for the global south. Checkmate.